I am Dr. Aloysius Anyichie. I'm an associate professor of educational psychology at Brandon University. Today we're going to talk about my study that I reported as a part of a book chapter with Canadian Association for Teacher Education. For this particular chapter, the focus was understanding a university professor's effort in preparing future classroom cultural responsive teacher leaders. That means leaders who understand the role of culture in student learning processes and are able to make the necessary changes in educational reform in order to support these students. In this particular study, I tried to look at what this particular professor was doing with regards to creating cultural responsive pedagogical practices in the classes for students to engage in them. And so within that context, there were opportunities for them building on interactive session that is common within professional development program for them to engage in these practices that were integrated into their regular classroom teaching in the context of educational psychology, and as well as involving them in reflective processes through a journal reflection assignment that asks them to think about how what is happening in the classes are connected to their lived experiences. And in the process, they completed a cultural diversity survey where they were asked about their beliefs, their knowledge, their understanding about supporting and addressing issues of cultural diversity in the classroom system. And this study is very pertinent and imperative because there are lots of culturally diverse students in our schools and communities. And so preparing future teachers who are leaders, not only taking up leadership positions as principals, but also becoming leaders in their classes in the terms of the choices they're making in instructional practices are very key to our educational system. And so one of the powerful findings of this research is that there was a shift in the way these pre-service teachers were thinking about themselves being leaders. And so they were saying things like they would deliberately understand the cultures of their students and try to infuse those things into their learning context. Our school system is being populated by students from different cultural and linguistic backgrounds. And so having culturally responsive teacher leaders is very important for leaders to understand that no one size fits all when it comes to attending to the needs of these students. And so it is very important that we have leaders who not only understand the role of culture in education, but try to deliberately create welcoming, inclusive learning environments by hiring teachers and faculty members that are representatives of the diversity of the students, as well as making sure that classroom activities are tailored towards the needs of the students. And that is all about equity. The students see themselves represented in the classes, that they are not visitors into the classes, and having leaders who would see the need to understand the systemic barriers to the learning of these students and being able to be proactive in solving those things. And that is also connected to student engagement, motivation, and achievement. So it is important because research has shown that when students see themselves represented in the classroom context, when they see people like them teaching them, they are more motivated to come to class the next day. And that way they learn. And that reduces the achievement gap that we see today that exists between minority, racialized, underrepresented students as against their counterparts who are in the mainstream culture. And overall, when these are implemented in classes with leaders that are culturally responsive, our students are being developed to become global citizens who will contribute in the development of society wherever they see themselves. There are multiple ways teachers could influence policy changes in the school system. So they can start off through the grassroots process by speaking out in their schools and districts and divisions about some of the challenges they are facing that they want be changed, because they are the people that are in direct contact with students on daily basis. So they tend to understand the student more than the leaders. And so the speaking up in the schools would influence policy change. They can also engage in partnership with researchers to conduct an empirical study about some of the things they want changed, so that through research-based data and findings that amplify whatever case they want to make for policy change. They can also get involved with different organizations that are around policy in education, so that being part of those organizations, they can contribute their voices in bringing about the changes they want to see. Another way they can engage in those process of policy change will be public engagement. So probably by writing opinion pieces, publishing things on the blog, leveraging social medias, saying their views to the public spaces so that people can hear what they want change, and attention could be drawn to that to make those necessary changes. Another thing they could do is to connect with elected officers like the legislators, the MLAs, and make sure that their views are counted by connecting with them, sharing opinions. That way they can influence the decisions that are made, even when they are not at the table where those decisions are made. So these are some of the things teachers could proactively and deliberately engage in order to see that the changes that are needed to attend to the diversity of students are met. There are multiple skills these teachers could develop. One, which is fundamental and key, is developing cultural competence and self-awareness. And that means understanding the cultures of their students and how those are impacting their learning, as well as their being aware of their own cultures, their own personal bias and cultural hegemony that can negatively be impacting the way they teach these students. So it's a skill they need to develop. Another thing could be building strong communication and relationship with the students, beyond the students, with their parents, their community, because when the community of these students understand that their teachers do care for them, to understand how they are living and bring those lived experiences of the students into the classrooms, it is very important and key for these students to see this so that they feel safe and welcome in the classes. And that will lead into adaptive teaching strategies, so that there might be some changes in the curriculum in order to accommodate the cultures and the rich experiences these students are bringing. So they have to open themselves to these realities of the day. Emotional intelligence and empathy is another thing to consider. They have to be emotionally intelligent to understand the emotions of these diverse students and how those are impacting their learning, and being able to show empathy in those situations, as well as a perspective taking, so that these students will see that their teachers do care for them. And that is a skill that can bring about those changes we are talking about. And above all, since it is not something that will happen overnight, they have to open themselves to continuous learning about cultural responsive teaching, so that bringing in the knowledge from these experiences, they will bring the kind of effect and the change that is required in 21st century classroom that is multicultural. There were lots of support in building of this chapter. The research reported in the chapter was sponsored and funded by BROC, that is Brandon University Research Committee. And that was very helpful in paying research assistants that supported this process. And in the writing itself, we had lots of colleagues who came together to share their thoughts about the chapters they want to write. We had a kind of community of learners. Multiple times we met, provided feedback to our work, and that helped to improve the quality of this work. It was interesting that the conference that led to the publication of this book happened here at BU, and having the conference situated in this university made it a lot easier for me to gain access to it, because I'm like, how can a conference like this happening here and I'm not part of it? And so that pushed my writing the proposal that was accepted into the conference, and then during the working sessions I presented that and received feedback. So for the fact it is a localized conference for me was very important towards my participating and having the chapter finally accepted.